All right, listeners, get ready for this one, because today we are diving deep into something truly bizarre.
Oh.
We're talking about a man in China, his family savings, and a streamer.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
This guy apparently sent a streamer over $500,000,
Wow.
just as she would call him bro.
Wait, seriously?
Seriously. And to get the full picture, we're going to look at two sources.
All right, let's hear it.
First up is this news article from Dixerto that lays out the whole wild story.
Okay, so that's like our jumping off point.
Exactly. And then, because sometimes real life is stranger than fiction,
Oh, I know.
we're also going to jump into a Reddit thread from Anna the Onion.
Of course. Where else would you go for stuff like this?
So the Reddit thread is all about this Dixerto article.
Perfect combo.
Hmm.
So the news gives us the facts, and then Reddit gives us the reactions.
You got it. All right, so let's get right into this Dixerto article.
Let's do it.
So the story goes that this man, surnamed Hong, sent a female streamer over $550,000.
$500,000. That's insane. What is he hoping to get out of it?
Okay, so get this. He wanted to hear her call him brother.
Seriously, that's all it took.
That's what it seems like.
Yeah.
And it gets even crazier. He started by spending his family's savings.
Oh, no.
And then he even limited himself to eating plain steamed buns to make the money last longer.
Jeez, this guy was committed.
And then when his family figured out what was going on and cut him off,
I bet they did.
he went and stole over $316,000 worth of copper.
He stole copper.
Yeah, copper. To send to her.
This is unbelievable.
I know. It's like something out of a movie.
So he gets caught, obviously.
Oh, yeah. He was arrested and confessed to the whole thing.
And what did he say his motivation was?
He basically said, I just wanted to hear her call me brother.
Unbelievable. The
Thanks.
lengths people will go to.
It's mind-blowing right here. Which brings us to the Reddit thread.
Oh, yeah. Let's hear what the internet had to say about this.
Well, people are understandably freaking out.
I can only imagine.
There's a ton of shock and dark humor mixed in. Like one of the top comments is, if you just want to hear her call you brother, why not just record it and play it on repeat?
Huh. That's hilarious. But also kind of makes you wonder.
Totally. Like, is this guy okay?
All right. There's clearly something more going on here than just wanting to hear a certain word.
Exactly. And a lot of the Redditors are saying the same thing.
Like what?
There are tons of comments about potential mental health issues.
Oh, yeah. You see that a lot online?
People are suggesting therapy or wondering if he has some undiagnosed condition.
Well, it's easy to jump to conclusions, especially with a story this wild.
For sure. But like we always say, we're not experts.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
We can't diagnose anyone from afar.
Exactly. What we can do, though, is talk about the bigger picture.
Okay, I like that.
And that's where this concept of parasocial relationships comes in.
Right. You mentioned that earlier.
So maybe that can help us make sense of this whole thing.
Okay. So for those who don't know, what are parasocial relationships exactly?
Basically, it's when a viewer develops a one-sided bond with someone they see in the media.
Like a streamer?
Yeah. Or a YouTuber, even a fictional character.
Okay. So it's like they feel like they really know this person.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Even though there's no actual real-life connection.
That makes sense. I've definitely felt that way about certain YouTubers.
So it's like you feel this intimacy, but it's all in your head.
Yeah, pretty much. And I guess that can be harmless.
Right. For most people, it's just a normal part of enjoying entertainment.
But for some, it can become a problem.
Or definitely.
In what way?
Well, that sense of connection can get distorted. You know,
Oh, I see.
it can lead to obsessive thoughts and behaviors.
Like spending all your time watching one streamer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or spending way too much money on them.
Oh, wow. That sounds like this case.
Yeah, totally. And it's not just streamers either.
Right. It could be any kind of media figure.
Yeah, like celebrities, YouTubers, even book characters.
So basically, anyone you can form this one-sided bond with.
Right. And the problem is that this obsession can take over your life.
Like you start neglecting your real-life relationships and responsibility.
Exactly. Which is what seems to have happened with Mr. Hong.
He definitely went to extremes.
Yeah, big time. He was willing to risk everything, his family's finances, even his freedom.
All for this fantasy connection.
It's pretty unsettling when you think about it.
It is. It makes you realize how powerful these parasocial relationships can be.
And how easily they can spiral out of control.
This is heavy stuff.
It is. But it's important to talk about.
Agreed. We need to understand these dynamics, especially in today's digital world.
Right. Because the lines between reality and the online world are getting blurrier and blurrier.
And that's where things can get really tricky.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Especially when you factor in things like cultural differences.
Oh, that's right. There was that whole thing about the translation.
Exactly. The Reddit thread brought up a really interesting point.
Remind me.
So apparently the translation of bro, in this case, might be misleading.
Really?
Yeah. The Chinese term used can have different connotations depending on the context.
Interesting. So what are you saying?
Well, some people are suggesting that maybe Mr. Hong wasn't actually looking for platonic brotherly recognition.
Huh. So it wasn't just about being called bro.
Maybe not.
Mm.
It's possible he was hoping for something more like a romantic connection.
Oh, wow. That changes things.
It does, right?
Yeah.
It makes the whole story even more complicated.
Definitely. It adds a whole new layer.
And makes you wonder if there were some cultural nuances that got lost in translation.
Right. Because language can be tricky, especially when you're dealing with sensitive topics like this.
Absolutely. And it's a good reminder that context is everything.
For sure. We can't just take things at face value. We need to consider the whole picture.
And speaking of context, there's another point from the Reddit thread that I think is really important.
Okay. That's that.
So some commenters were drawing parallels between Mr. Hong's story
Uh-huh.
and that case from a few years back about the American man who spent his parents' money on a cam girl.
Oh, yeah. I remember that case. It was tragic.
It was. And when his parents tried to intervene,
What happened?
he ended up murdering them.
Oh, my God.
That's all.
It was a horrific case, and it really shook people up.
I can imagine.
And while it's important not to oversimplify things or sensationalize,
Of course.
it does make you wonder if there are some common threads here.
Like what?
Well, could there be some underlying psychological factors that contribute to these kinds of extreme behaviors?
That's a good question.
Regardless of cultural background or the specific online platform,
It makes you think about the dark side of the internet.
it does.
Yeah.
And the potential for things to go really wrong.
Especially when you have these intense online relationships.
Right. And that's where the conversation about mental health becomes even more crucial.
Absolutely.
Mm.
We need to be able to recognize the warning signs, both in ourselves and in others.
So that we can get help before it's too late.
Exactly. Because prevention is always better than intervention.
Well said. So, while this story might seem like an isolated incident,
True. It could just be a one-off.
it actually brings up some bigger questions about online culture and the psychology of obsession. And those are things that affect all of us in some way.
Whether we realize it or not.
Exactly. So this deep dive is really about understanding ourselves and the world around us.
And hopefully learning how to navigate this digital landscape in a healthier and more balanced way.
Couldn't agree more.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground already.
We have, and it's been pretty intense.
But hold on to your hats because the story takes another crazy turn.
Oh, there's more.
Oh, yeah. This is where things get really interesting.
I'm alive.
One of the Redditors noticed something peculiar about the photo of Mr. Hong being arrested.
Okay.
It was included in that Dixerto article we talked about.
What about it?
Well, this eagle-eyed Redditor claims that the police car in the photo
Yeah.
is actually German.
Wait, German?
Yeah, they pointed out specific markings and the uniforms of the officers.
Are you serious? So this whole story might not have even taken place in China.
It definitely raises some serious questions about the accuracy of that Dixerto article.
This just got a whole lot more complicated.
It did. So now we have to ask ourselves, could this whole thing be fake?
Oh man, I did not see that coming.
And if so, why would someone create and spread a story like this?
That's the million-dollar question.
And that's exactly what we're going to explore in the next part of our deep dive.
I can't wait.
Get ready for more twists and turns because this story is far from over.
This is turning into a real mystery.
It is. And we're going to get to the bottom of it. Stay tuned.
A German police car. Seriously.
That's what this Redditor is claiming.
So is this whole Dixerto article bogus?
It's definitely possible. We're starting to wonder if maybe it's a case of misinformation.
Or even a total fabrication.
It wouldn't be the first time a story like this turned out to be fake.
I guess not. But why would someone make something like this up?
That's the big question, right? What's the motivation?
Oh, and the obvious answer is clicks.
Right. Website traffic generating buzz on social media.
Exactly. It's a pretty effective way to get attention.
Especially if you're trying to push a certain narrative.
Like maybe someone wanted to create this cautionary tale about online obsession.
Even if they had to embellish the truth a bit.
It happens all the time. Unfortunately.
But what if it's something more sinister?
Like what?
Well, couldn't this be an attempt to damage the reputation of streamers or online platforms in general?
You're right. We've seen how easy it is to manipulate public opinion with fake news.
Exactly. And this whole bro story could be a way to fuel those negative perceptions.
It's scary how quickly things can spread online.
Totally. And how hard it can be to separate fact from fiction.
This whole situation is a perfect example of why we need to be so careful about what we believe.
Absolutely. Critical thinking is more important than ever.
We can't just blindly trust everything we read online.
We have to be skeptical, question our sources, and think for ourselves.
So where does this leave our deep dive?
Well, that we just throw out the entire story and focus on this potential misinformation angle?
Not necessarily. Even if the specifics of that Dig0 article are shaky,
Yeah.
the bigger issues it raises are still valid.
You're right, because whether or not this particular case is true,
Right.
parasocial relationships, online obsession, the blurring of lines between reality and the digital world,
All of that is very real.
and it's affecting people's lives in profound ways.
So maybe instead of getting hung up on the accuracy of the original story,
Okay.
we can use it as a jumping off point to examine these larger issues.
I like that. So it's less about verifying every detail
Exactly.
and more about exploring the themes and implications.
Because that's what our deep dives are all about.
Right, helping people understand complex topics and gain a deeper understanding of the world.
In this case, whether true or not,
Right.
has definitely opened up a can of worms.
It has. There's so much to unpack here about online culture, parasocial relationships,
Yeah.
psychology of obsession.
And the Reddit thread is still a valuable resource for exploring all of that.
Exactly, because it shows how people are grappling with these issues.
Even if the initial story that sparked the conversation is questionable.
Okay, so let's shift gears a bit. Let's dive back into those Reddit comments and see what we can learn.
Alrighty.
One thread that I found really interesting was about the potential harms of parasocial relationships.
Oh, yeah. There was a lot of debate about that,
Some people were arguing that they're inherently unhealthy.
while others were defending them as a harmless form of entertainment.
It was a real back and forth.
It's a complex issue, for sure.
So what's the main argument against parasocial relationships?
Well, the people who view them as problematic,
Uh-huh.
they talk about the power imbalance,
Yeah.
the lack of reciprocity.
Right, it's not a two-way street.
Exactly. And they argue that these relationships can lead to unrealistic expectations.
And emotional dependence.
Right. You start relying on this online persona for validation and connection,
And they can blur the lines between fantasy and reality.
which can be dangerous.
And we've seen cases where fans become overly attached to streamers or celebrities.
Stalking harassment, even violence.
It's scary stuff.
It is. It's a reminder that even though these relationships feel real, they're not. And we have to be careful not to lose sight of that.
But then you have the other side of the argument.
Right. The people who see parasocial relationships as a normal part of life.
They say it's just a way to connect with like-minded people, find enjoyment, escape from stress.
Even learn new things.
And there's some truth to that.
Oh, definitely. Studies have shown that parasocial relationships can provide a sense of belonging.
Really, yeah.
Yeah. They can boost self-esteem and even inspire creativity.
That's interesting.
And for some people, especially those who might be isolated or lonely,
Uh-huh.
these online connections can be a valuable source of support.
So it sounds like it's not about demonizing parasocial relationships altogether.
Exactly. It's about recognizing the potential risks.
And finding a healthy balance.
Exactly.
Another thread that sparked a lot of debate was about the ethics of streamers accepting large donations from fans,
Oh, yeah. That's a tough one.
especially if those fans might be struggling financially or emotionally vulnerable.
It's a gray area for sure.
Because on the one hand, streamers are providing a service,
Right. They're creating content, entertaining people, building a community.
and they deserve to be compensated for their time and effort,
And on the other hand, fans have the right to spend their money however they choose.
as long as they're not harming themselves or others.
But there's also this moral responsibility to consider,
Right, like are streamers taking advantage of their fans?
especially those who might be more susceptible to manipulation.
It's a valid concern.
Some people were suggesting that streaming platforms should step in.
Like create stricter rules around donations?
Yeah. Or maybe provide support resources for fans who might be at risk.
That's an interesting idea. But it raises a lot of questions about freedom of choice.
Right. And the role of platforms in regulating online interactions.
That's a slippery slope.
It is, but I think it's a conversation we need to have.
I agree. Because the current system doesn't seem to be working for everyone.
Especially when you see cases like Mr. Hong's.
This whole situation is a wake-up call.
We need to find a way to protect both streamers and fans.
And make sure everyone is treated fairly.
Okay. So moving on.
Uh-huh.
There was another thread that got pretty dark.
Oh, yeah.
It was about the potential for parasocial relationships to become obsessive and even dangerous.
That's the nightmare scenario.
It is. And while it's important not to sensationalize,
Of course.
it is a real risk that we need to acknowledge.
Especially when you consider how prevalent parasocial relationships are these days.
And the stories people were sharing in that thread.
Chilling stuff.
Fans fixated on streamers sending unwanted gifts, showing up at their homes, making threats.
It's a reminder that streamers are real people with lives and boundaries.
And just because someone shares their life online doesn't mean they're giving up their right to privacy and safety.
And that case we talked about earlier, the American man who killed his family after spending their money on a cam girl.
That was horrific.
It was. And it shows how extreme these obsessions can become.
It's a wake-up call for all of us.
We need to be able to recognize the warning signs of unhealthy obsession.
Both in ourselves and in others.
And know when to seek help.
If you find yourself constantly thinking about a streamer,
or neglecting your responsibilities,
or having intrusive thoughts,
it's crucial to reach out to a mental health professional.
Don't be afraid to ask for help.
It could save your life.
There's also an interesting point about anonymity playing a role in these unhealthy attachments.
Oh, yeah. What was that?
So someone argued that the anonymity of online interactions allows people to project their fantasies onto streamers.
Without any real-life consequences for their actions.
It's like they feel invincible behind their screen names.
And that can embolden them to do things they would never do in person.
That makes sense.
And then there's the whole issue of curated online personas.
Right. Streamers often present this idealized version of themselves.
It's like a highlight reel of their best moments.
And that can fuel unrealistic expectations and fantasies in viewers.
It's easy to forget that what we see online is often a carefully constructed performance.
Right. Streamers are human beings just like everyone else.
They have flaws and imperfections.
But those imperfections rarely make it into the stream.
So it's important for viewers to remember that.
To maintain a healthy level of skepticism.
And not get too caught up in the fantasy.
So if we're trying to distill some key takeaways from all of this,
Okay.
I think it comes down to a few things.
Let's hear it.
First, be aware of your own vulnerabilities.
Right. We all have them.
Second, prioritize real-life connections and experiences.
Don't let the online world consume you.
And third, maintain a healthy skepticism about what you see online.
Don't believe everything you read or see.
Because the truth is often more complicated than it appears.
Well said.
Okay.
There's one more thread I want to touch on before we move on.
Okay, shoot.
It's about the bigger societal implications of all of this.
Oh, yeah. The macro level.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, how are parasocial relationships and this blurring of lines between reality and the digital world affecting society as a whole?
That's a big question.
It is. And there were a lot of different perspectives in that thread.
I bet.
Some people were concerned about the potential for social isolation.
Right. Like if we're all spending more time interacting with online personas, are we neglecting our real-life relationship?
And could that lead to a decline in empathy and a decrease in real-world interactions?
It's a valid concern.
Especially when you consider how much time people are spending online these days.
But then there was the counter-argument that technology is just a tool.
Right.
And it's up to us to use it responsibly.
Like some people pointed out that online communities can be incredible sources of support.
And connection.
And even opportunities for activism and social change.
That's true. We've seen the power of the internet to mobilize people.
So it's not all doom and gloom.
Definitely not. It's about finding a balance.
Harnessing the positive aspects of technology.
While mitigating the potential downsides.
And that's not easy.
It's a challenge, for sure.
Well, this has been a fascinating and thought-provoking discussion.
I agree.
We've covered a lot of ground.
From a bizarre story about a man and his streamer obsession.
To the broader implications of parasocial relationships and online culture.
It's been quite a journey.
And we're not done yet.
There's still more to explore.
In the final part of our deep dives,
yes,
we're going to talk about potential solutions and strategies for navigating this digital landscape in a healthier way.
I'm looking forward to it.
Stay tuned because we're about to get practical. All right, so we've explored this wild story, questioned its authenticity, and really gone deep into this whole digital world.
Yeah, we've covered a lot.
And now the big question is, where do we go from here? What can we actually do with all this information?
I think the key takeaway is that we need to be more media literate.
Like be smarter consumers of content.
Exactly. We're bombarded with information and personalities and curated content.
All the time. It's overwhelming.
And it's easy to get swept away in it all.
Yeah.
You know, lose sight of what's real. It's so true. There was this one comment on Reddit that really stuck with me.
Oh, yeah.
It said, "The line between a healthy hobby and an unhealthy obsession is thinner than you think."
Wow. That's powerful
Yeah.
and so true.
Right. It's a little chilling, but it makes you stop and think.
It does.
Yeah.
It's a reminder to be really honest with ourselves.
Like, are we using these online spaces for fun and connection? Or are we trying to fill some void?
Sometimes it's hard to tell the difference.
It is. And speaking of honesty, another Reddit comment that hit me hard was,
What was it?
someone said, donating to someone who doesn't know you exist is like throwing money into a wishing well.
Ouch.
Ah.
But true.
You might feel good in the moment, but nothing really changes.
It's a good analogy.
Yeah.
It reminds us to invest in real-life relationships,
Where there's actual give and take.
not just this one-sided flow of attention or money.
So I guess it all comes back to balance.
Finding that balance between the online world and real life.
And a lot of the Redditors had some practical tips for doing that.
Like what?
Well, one that kept coming up was setting limits on your time.
Yeah, and on your spending, too.
It's like budgeting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You decide how much time and money you're willing to spend on online entertainment,
And then you stick to it.
no matter what.
Another good suggestion was to diversify your online diet.
What do you mean by that?
Don't just follow people who agree with you.
Oh, I see. Expose yourself to different perspectives.
Yeah. It's good to challenge your own beliefs.
Keep your mind sharp.
Exactly.
Oh, and here's one more gem from the Reddit Wisdom Bank.
You hit me with it.
If a streamer makes you feel bad about yourself or your life, unfollow them.
Mm-hmm.
Simple as that.
That's so simple, but so true.
Right. We have the power to choose who we engage with online.
And we don't have to put up with negativity.
So to sum it all up,
The big picture
it's about being mindful about our online interactions.
and protecting our well-being.
We've explored a lot of heavy stuff today.
We have parasocial relationships,
Mhm.
misinformation, the psychology of obsession,
Ethical dilemmas.
the whole shebang.
But it's not about scaring people.
No,
Yeah.
it's about empowering them.
Giving them the tools to navigate this digital landscape in a healthy way.
Because the online world is here to stay.
It's not going anywhere.
So we need to learn to live with it in a way that benefits us.
Not harms us.
Exactly. And that takes awareness and effort.
But it's worth it.
Definitely. Well, we've reached the end of another deep dive.
And it's been quite a ride.
It has, but hopefully you've learned something along the way.
Something that will help you navigate your own digital life.
And if you're still thinking about this story and all its implications,
Good. That means we've done our job.
keep those conversations going.
Question everything.
Stay curious.
And most importantly,
Stay safe out there.
until next time.